Hi guys, welcome back. So last week I tested a W7 palette. It was the orange vivid palette. Today I have the pink one. So these are dupes for the Huda neon palette. So I have the pink version here along with the W7 pink version. I find the pink one really confusing because this looks nearly identical to my orange one, but it's definitely the pink version. It has different shades inside. So I've already gone ahead and done my eye makeup. I've done one side with this W7 palette and I've done one side with this Huda neon palette. They are very similar, but they are slightly different as well. They have the same shades, but you know, slightly different. So I'll show you the insides. So this one here is the Huda and this one is the W7. As you can see, very similar, but ever so slightly different in the shades. And as I say, I've put one on one eye and one on the other just to see how they fare. And I must say, this time I much preferred the Huda version. Last time I much preferred the W7 version. So they're keeping us on our toes with these palettes. So what I want you to do down in the comments, let me know which one is which. So we've got number 1 here, number 2 here, which one is Huda and which one is W7. So number 1 and number 2. So that being said, let's swatch both of these, you know, next to each other and see how similar they are. I must say that the shimmer that I used, I didn't really rate it. It might just be the one shade in the palette that's a bit rubbish for the W7 one. The Huda one was stunning, and maybe it's just the one shade. But looking at these shimmers, the pink in the corner is very similar, this one here, but the other ones don't seem to do the palette justice compared to the Huda one. The mattes seem perfectly great. It's just the shimmers that are a bit sort of letting it down this time. So anyway, I shall go ahead and swatch these. So we're going to start with W7 just because that's the one I picked up first. So that's the first shade, which is a matte pink, and this is the corresponding Huda shade. Very similar. Not that much in it at all. Maybe the Huda is a little bit more pigmented. Then we've got the shimmer shade, and this one looks nothing like the Huda version, so we will see. So that's the W7. You can barely see it. Let's see if I can swatch it a second time. I have found the shimmers in this palette a lot worse than the orange palette, if I'm honest. So yeah, it's not really showing up that well. Let's see if the Huda does, because it is a light colour, so maybe that's why. But the consistency of these shimmers just feels so creamy in the Huda palette. And yeah, they look identical actually on the skin when I'm looking at them like that. They don't show up at all, but they are pretty much identical to look at. However, the Huda felt nicer. It felt more creamy. It felt easier to work with. And I certainly noticed that when I used the shade that I used on my eyes, the Huda went on beautifully and the W7 was a bit of a struggle. So let's move on to the next shade. So we've got a light pink. I've just done the Huda by accident. Let's do the W7. The W7 one is very vibrant. The Huda one in the pan is a different colour, so I don't expect it to be as vibrant, and it isn't, but it's not meant to be. I think like W7 have got the wrong shade, so that's the W7, that's the Huda, but it's lighter in the pan. It's not meant to be that shade, because that one is almost the same as this one, and they're meant to be different shades, if that makes sense. So I think they've made a mistake with that one, W7. So then we've got a purple. We're on to the next row now. That's a W7. That is gorgeous pigmentation. This is the Huda. Very similar. Next we're on to another shimmer. And let me just clean my hands off because I don't really want to end up mixing all the colours because it's not going to help us see what's what. So we're on to the next shimmer. So I'm not holding out much hope for, oh, that shocked me. So that's the W7 shimmer. Look at it. I've done it in the wrong place. Let me just do it across my arm so you can see. Look at that. And it was creamy too. I think it's the one shade that I picked was a bit duff. So let's try this one. This is the Huda version. Okay, so it's a different shade, but they're both equally pretty. So yeah, I think when I've gone to pick my shades, I've picked probably the worst shade in the palette, as in the worst performing shade. And then I've made a judgment on that. So I'm glad I'm swatching these because I'm giving it its full due rather than just saying, oh, it's not as good. Which it isn't, because obviously that one shade isn't as good. But I kind of wrote off the whole palette when I needn't do that. So they're very similar. The reason that's a bit rubbish is because I slipped. But again, very, very similar. Very, very good pigmentation. So we're on the last row. So we've got a shimmery dark pink. So that's the W7. Very pigmented. That's the Huda. Very pigmented. We've got this one, which is the bone of contention, which I'm just going to do now. I'm just going to make sure all my hands clean before we start this one, because this is the one that I really struggled with. So, this is the W7. And it doesn't look too bad. It's quite pretty. It's not a bad shade. But this is the Huda. And you can see the difference. You can see that that's quite see-through, whereas this one's more sort of solid. It's just a better shade. So if you can see on my eyes, this one's the Huda. You can see it's a bit more pigmented. This one is the W7, and it's kind of like almost disappeared. It's not held its own. It's more of a topper than a shade by itself, whereas the Huda one can be used as a shade by itself. And then we've run out of room. Where can we go? We'll go down the side of my hand. So we've got the last shade, which is W7 there, and then the last shade, which is Huda there. So we've got W7 and Huda. Again, very, very similar. So all in all, it's not a bad palette. It has stood its ground in the way that everything is very, very similar. The pigmentation is there. The only thing is, yeah, they're not as good as Huda in the shimmer department. So we've got this one versus this one. They are both pretty, but this one you could wear on its own, like I have done today in this section. And the other side kind of needs maybe a colour underneath just to stop it sort of disappearing into the ether and just looking like a bit of a mess. So that's not a bad thing. It's just an observation. It's just something that you would have to work with should you have this palette. I do actually think it is still a pretty decent palette for the price, because I mean, I paid, I think it was about £16 for 3 of these, whereas this is like £25, I think. And I've heard someone told me that you can get these even cheaper in like Savers. They don't do them in my Savers, but they might do them in yours. I can't remember whether they said they were £3.95 or £2.95. It was something less than a fiver. So less than a fiver, 25 quid. Then it puts it into perspective. Well, is this eye really awful and shocking? No. Is this eye better? Yes. Is this eye, you know, could it be improved upon by putting another colour underneath? Probably. It'd probably be a lot better. And it'd probably be worth you spending the little amount and then just sticking maybe even, let's see what colours we've got. Maybe not one out of these palettes because there don't seem to be one that would go underneath, but maybe one out of another palette that you've already got you could pop underneath and that would sort the problem out. Or just avoid that shade because you've still got all the other shades in the palette. I'm sure there's something that you could do. But, you know, it's cheaper, and with cheaper products, sometimes you get just as good a deal. Other times they aren't worth it. Even, you know, some products aren't even worth the money that you pay for them because they don't do anything, they don't work at all, they look rubbish. That one, most of the colours look fine, it was just the one shade, so I would say it was worth it. A little bit disappointing because that is like my favourite shade in the palette. A little bit disappointing, but worth getting, unless obviously if you had the funds, I'd say get the Huda in this situation. I didn't say that with the last palette, I just, I think I said that I thought I liked them equally. But with this one, I would definitely say get the Huda if you can. I definitely noticed a massive difference in the feel of the shimmer shades. They were silkier, they were smoother, they were creamy. And I totally noticed that difference with that palette, this palette. It wasn't as obvious in the orange palette. The orange palette did seem to perform better and have a better formula, which to me is a bit confusing seeing as how they're from the same range and you can get them in a 3-pack. But anyway, I would still recommend it, but I would say obviously with a pinch of salt that it's not a Huda palette, it's not going to ever be a Huda palette, but it is a decent enough dupe to the point where, unless I pointed it out, would you really know that I had 2 different eyeshadow palettes on my face? Probably not. I filmed a video prior to this, and I'm going to film a couple of videos after this, and I'm hoping no one sort of goes, have you got 2 different eyeshadows on? I don't think anyone would notice, especially not from a distance, so that goes to show that it is pretty good dupe if it's, you know, so unnoticeable that, you know, no one would notice. Well, I'm hoping no one does. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in a video again soon. Bye!